ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। नारायणं नमस्कृत्य नरं चैव नरोत्तमं देवीं सरस्वतीं व्यासं ततो जयम् उदीरयेत्। नष्टप्रायेषु भद्रेषु नित्यं भागवत सेवया भगवती उत्तमश्लोके भक्तिर्भवति नैष्ठिकी। कृष्णाय वासुदेवाय देवकीनन्दनाय च नन्दगोपकुमाराय गोविन्दाय नमो नमः। ॐ अज्ञानतिमिरान्धस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनच्छलाकया चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। श्रीचैतन्यमनोभीष्टं स्थापितं येन भूतले स्वयं रूपः कदा मह्यं ददाति स्वपदान्तिकम्। वन्देऽहं श्रीगुरोः श्रीयुतापदकमलं श्रीगुरून् वैष्णवांश्च श्रीरूपं साग्रजातं सहगणा रघुनाथान्वितं तं सजीवं साद्वैतं सावधूतं परिजनासहितं कृष्णचैतन्यदेवं श्रीराधाकृष्णपादान् सहगणललिता श्रीविशाखान्वितांश्च हे कृष्णकरुणा सिन्धु दीनबंधु जगतपते गोपेशा गोपिका कांत राधा कांत नमोस्तुते तप्त कांचन गौरांगी राधे वृंदावनेश्वरी वृषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये। वंशकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्य एव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्त वृंद। हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे। नमो विष्णुपादाय कृष्ण परिष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते राधानाथ स्वामी नाम। नमो ओम विष्णुपादाय कृष्ण परिष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदांत स्वामी नामिने नमस्ते सारस्वती गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शतदिष्टारणे मुखं करोति वाचालं अंगुं लंघयते गिरिं यत्कृपातमहं वन्दे श्रीगुरुं दीनतारिणं परमानन्दमाधवं श्रीचैतन्य ईश्वरम्। हरि ओम तत्सत्। Hare Krishna. So thank you all for connecting. We have reached a very interesting part of the Srimad Bhagavat. We have managed to cross over, actually all of you, successfully over the very technical parts of the creation. Often it is difficult after the first canto. First canto still has a lot of pastimes there. Between the first canto and up to this point in the third canto, there are a lot of technicalities with respect to creation, not so much of stories, but more of conversations which reveal the philosophy and the technicalities. So the fact that you have still maintained your enthusiasm means you have some genuine appreciation and some genuine attraction to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So this is very good. Congratulations. Because it is easy when we talk about pastimes, as in stories of the Lord, it's easier relatively to be attracted. But when we talk purely about the glories of the Lord in terms of his potencies, in terms of the creation process, it's a bit more hard. It's harder for conditioned souls to relate and appreciate. But nonetheless, this is very important for us to understand, because we have to come to the realization that we are not just talking about a God who is up there somewhere and we are here in this world. You have to understand how much this entire existence is so much dependent on the Lord in every way. In fact, everything is emanating from the Lord. Everything is coming from the various elements that the Lord has made and how the Lord himself is holding this entire material existence together, holding by his energy and at the same time entering into each and every atom, entering into the heart of each and every living entity, how much the Lord is very much present, not just within each and every living entity, but within each and every atom. Andantarastacha paramanu chayantarastham govindamadi purusham tamaham bhajami. That Govinda is not just present within the universe as a whole, but within each and every particle and subparticle, atomic subparticle thereof, paramanu. So this concept of atomic and subatomic particles was there in the Vedas right from the beginning. In modern science, it was only Dalton who first apparently proposed the atomic theory, Dalton's atomic theory. But at that time, he didn't even know subatomic particles. The Vedas, since time immemorial, talk about the subatomic particles. Anyways, so all this knowledge is important. Now we are at chapter 13 of the third canto. And today's chapter that we are about to begin is entitled The Appearance of Lord Varaha. So now that Brahmaji has made the creation, and now that he's in the process of populating it, he has created, at the end of the previous chapter, two great personalities came from his body as soon as he thought about populating the universe. Of course, he made a couple of attempts initially by creating the four Kumaras who rejected, then Narad Muni who was also not interested. Finally, Swayambhuva Manu, a very great personality, came from his body, and from the body also came Shatarupa, a female form. And that, like what we discussed the last time, is the first couple who was created, and the system of the combination of the male and female for propagating the race that came at that point in time. So Swayambhuva Manu and Shatarupa combined, and we discussed this in the last chapter, how they produced various children, daughters and sons, and how they married their daughters to the sages that were created earlier by Brahmaji. So the sages were created, but obviously, they were waiting for wives. So now here come the wives. So they get married. Kardama Muni gets married to Devahuti, and the various other sages get married to various, other personalities. And then the population of the universe begins. So this particular chapter begins with Vidura inquiring further on the topics. So when Maitreya Muni stops at this particular point, Vidura gets very excited. He says, "Oh, Maitreya Rishi, now please tell me, after Swayambhuva Manu was born and he got married and he had his wife and whatever you told, after that, what all did he do? I am very interested to hear about him. And I'm very interested to hear about him, not just because he's a king. Of course, he was the king of all kings, the Manu. The Manu is the leader of the Manvantara. He's the original king of all kings. He's the original ruler from the perspective of those who formally govern and rule a kingdom. He was the first formal king, Manu. And the first Manu is Swayambhuva Manu. At the beginning of the day of Brahma, the first Manvantara is Swayambhuva Manvantara. So he's the first Manu. He was the king of all kings. And not only that, he is such a great devotee of the Lord. And because he's such a great devotee, it is worth hearing about his sublime character and activity. So please tell me, I'm very eager to hear. Please describe about Swayambhuva Manu. So now, Vidura is excited to know in detail about Swayambhuva Manu. And he explains why this is so interesting. So sometimes one may wonder, he was speaking about the Lord and his creation and the Lord, and suddenly why he got interested in the personal life of this Swayambhuva Manu? What's so exciting? Did he get interested in politics, Vidura Muni? What happened? So Vidurji explains his position. He says, for the benefit of all of us, he says that it is ultimately the most desirable object for all living entities to hear about the great character and pastimes and qualities of pure devotees like Swayambhuva Manu. And it is desirable to hear the qualities and the activities and the life of such pure devotees from the mouth of pure devotees like the spiritual master. For this one must work hard to hear. This is the perfection. So spiritual hearing, spiritual katha is not just limited to the hearing of the direct pastimes, name, form, qualities, and pastimes of the Lord, but also includes hearing about the activities, qualities, pastimes of the Lord's pure devotees. Tadhiya. In fact, he says here that hearing about the pure devotees is the topmost. So please tell me about the lives of the pure devotees, especially in this case, about the activities of Swayambhuva Manu. And then he explains a little bit more. Why is it so important to hear about the lives of pure devotees? Shuddha Bhaktas, the great self-realized souls who have dedicated their lives to the Lord. It is important because while definitely the pastimes and qualities of the Lord are definitely purifying, but when it comes to practicing and becoming a devotee of the Lord, there is nothing better for us than the examples of those who have already reached that level. If you remember in the Bhagavad Gita itself, Arjuna very excitedly asked Krishna, Stita prajnasya ka bhasha samadhistasya keshava stitadhi kim prabhasheta kim asita vrajeta kim. Please tell me about the behavior of those great souls who have achieved perfection. How they talk, how they walk, how they behave. Because he wants to understand, he wants to emulate, he wants to model his life based on how these great personalities act in this world. And for us, conditioned souls who are aspiring to evolve in spiritual life and aspiring to achieve the state of pure devotion, the lives of these great souls serve as a great beacon light, a guidance light for all of us. We learn from how they think, how they behave in different situations. It inspires us to see how devoted and dedicated they are to the Lord, how firmly they are established in their devotion and service to the Lord, in spite of so many difficult situations. Sometimes we say, yes, we must be steadily devoted to the Lord. But how steady? Then comes the example of Prahlad. This is the measure of steadiness. Thrown from the mountains, trampled under elephants, burned in fire, poked by spears, given poison, all kinds of things. Still fully steady. Not just that he survived. The story is not just about he survived and he was protected. How he remained so perfectly steady in his spiritual consciousness, even though he went through so many difficult situations. That is worth emulating. Even if he had lost his life, if the Lord had so chosen at that point in time, he will still remain in peaceful consciousness. It is that consciousness that we want to emulate. These pure devotees can display this kind of a character because they are always fully absorbed in the thoughts of the lotus feet of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Mukunda, who gives liberation. So it's very important. In fact, Lord Shiva, the Padma Puran, I think it's in the Padma Puran if I'm not wrong, he's having a conversation with Parvati Devi, his wife. Parvati Devi is non different from Durga Devi. So he says a very beautiful verse. Parvati asks him, Asked Lord Shiva, what is the supreme object of worship? So Lord Shiva gives a very beautiful answer. He says, Aradhananam sarvesham Vishnur aradhana param. Of all forms of worship in this world, the worship of Lord Vishnu and his forms is the topmost. I'm not saying Lord Shiva is telling Parvati, Aradhananam sarvesham Vishnur aradhana param. But it doesn't stop there. He says one more line. Tasmat parataram Devi. But O Devi, O Goddess, O Parvati, O Durga, Tasmat parataram. There is something even better and higher than worship of Vishnu. What is that? Tadiyanam samarchanam. To worship those dear devotees who are connected to Vishnu. Tadiya means those who are very closely connected with the Lord. Of course, this is not just limited to devotees, but the Lord's paraphernalia and anything, the abode, all those things are which are tadiya vastu, those which are very intimately connected with the Lord. They are even more worshipable. Why? Because it is so much easier to access the Lord and appreciate the Lord and attain the Lord when we approach Him by worshipping and learning from the tadiya vastu. That is the secret. And in the same spirit of what Lord Shiva is telling Durga Devi, the same spirit here, Vidura is telling Maitreya Muni. Yes, I want to hear about the Lord, but it is the topmost desirable thing to hear about the lives of pure devotees. Please tell me about the Swayambhuva Manu. Swayambhuva Manu is one of the 12 Mahajans. He's a perfectly pure devotee. Narad Muni was also perfectly pure devotee. Kumaras were also perfectly pure devotee. Brahmaji himself is also perfectly pure devotee. Lord Shiva himself is a perfectly pure devotee. He's of course the Lord also as an incarnation, but at the same time he's a fully spiritually realized personality. And Shukdev Goswami at this point in time, because Shukdev Goswami is narrating the conversation between Vidura and Maitreya Muni, he says that Maitreya Muni, when he heard this question from Vidura, he became very happy. Why? Because Maitreya Muni knew the position of Vidura. Who is this Vidura? This Vidura is not an ordinary person. Vidura had personal association of the Lord. Such personal association that Krishna would come and eat in the house of Vidura. And after eating, the Lord would lie down on the sofa, whatever the sofa or the bed was in those days. Yes. Right. After a heavy meal, we like to just, relax. One should not sleep, but one likes to just, relax and let. So at that time, when the Lord would sit with his legs stretched, Vidura would come there and he would lift the feet of the Lord and place the feet of the Lord, which were outstretched, he would place them on his lap. As if the lap of Vidura was a pillow for the lotus feet of the Lord. And he would gently massage the Lord's lotus feet. So beautiful. That is Vidura's position. This is being described by Shukdev Goswami just to tell who is this Vidura. And this Vidura is so humble and meek that he is going in front of Maitreya Rishi and saying, please tell me about the greatness of this great devotee Swayambhuva Manu. How meek and humble he is. See, this is the character of great pure devotees. They are extremely humble. They are always eager to hear the glories of other devotees. They never feel envious. Oh, why he's better than me? Oh, why he's glorified more? His name is mentioned in the Bhagavad, my name is not mentioned. In fact, great devotees run away from praise and glorification. And there are many stories of that. I'll not go into that, otherwise we will not be able to complete the chapter. But Maitreya Muni was very pleased when he saw this attitude of Vidura. And based on his inspiration, he began to speak. So Maitreya Muni starts narrating about the character of Swayambhuva Manu. He says Manu, who is the father of mankind, along with Shatarupa, his wife, after they were born, they were created, they approached Brahmaji in a very humble, prayerful attitude with folded hands. They glorified him. Oh Lord Brahma, you are the father of all living entities. Everybody has been created by you. We are humbly requesting you to tell us, how can we serve you? हम आपकी कैसे सेवा कर सकते हैं? How can I serve you? And the scripture says this is the most perfect question to ask the guru or the spiritual superior. In this case, Brahmaji was also their father. So father is also like a guru. So this is the most perfect question to ask. Please tell me how I can serve you. Give us directions on what duties we should execute so that it will bring all good fortune for us. And I promise you, whatever you tell us, we will execute it to our best capacity. And we are sure that if we follow the instructions of a superior like you, it will be good for us in this life. It will give us everything we need, including fame and prosperity and well-being, but also it will help us to achieve a higher destination. So this is the humble position that great souls take in front of superiors, the gurus and the spiritual teachers. Please tell me how, what I should do and how I should do. Because they know that those who are more advanced than them, when they receive guidance from them, they follow that guidance, that will lead to great good fortune. So Brahmaji was very pleased. He told him, "Oh Swayambhu Manu, I am so pleased with your attitude. You have come with me, in front of me with folded hands. Without any reservations, you have surrendered to me and asked me for instructions. This is so wonderful. This is the proper thing to do. This is how a son should be in front of the father." This kind of adoration and respect for a superior is desirable. You are free from all envy. And it is the right thing for the son to accept the order of his father happily and execute it to his full capacity. I'm very pleased. And Brahmaji was very pleased because also there's the background, right? Of course, he was pleased and he would have been pleased anyway. But the background is, initially he was a bit disappointed by some of his previous experiences when he was trying to encourage some of his earlier progeny to procreate. So here now, Swayambhu Manu readily submits himself in front of Brahmaji, whatever instruction you give. So he gives him 3 instructions. What are those 3 instructions? Instruction number 1, please produce progeny, qualified children, not just wanton children, qualified children like yourself. This is the duty of the father. First, the father must be trained himself, and the duty of the father is to produce children who are also trained like himself, so that the quality of the residents in society is maintained. There should not be degradation. They should be trained. It is the duty of the father to train the children. So produce children who are qualified like you. Instruction number 1. Instruction number 2, you have been created as the first ruler, so rule the world. Rule the world not just to enjoy ruling. The objective of ruling the world is to ensure that everybody in this world is trained properly, protected and trained to properly advance in spiritual consciousness, especially in the principles of devotional service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Because what is the job of the king? The king, the scripture says,. Naradeva means he is Dev, he's like God on earth. This is the original concept. Of course, in Kali Yuga, it's very hard to find these kind of kings. But the king is supposed to be Naradeva. He is supposed to be the representative of God on earth. And he executes the will of the Lord as given in the scriptures and the purpose of the Lord on earth by governing the kingdom according to the laws of God. That is the duty of the king. The king is not just simply supposed to be a businessman that he fights and he captures other kingdoms and he enjoys the kingdoms. His duty is to protect, but protecting is not just about physical protection with a sword for his subjects. That way, even the trees in the forest, the monkeys in the forest are protected. Yeah. The birds in the sky are protected. No, what's the value of that kind of protection? That has limited value. The real protection that the king is supposed to give is to ensure that society is properly organized in a peaceful manner based on spiritual principles, and everyone is given the right facility and guidance to advance nicely in spiritual life. That is the duty of the king. That's why scriptures say that the king's role, the leader of the country, of course, nowadays the king may be the president, the king may be the prime minister, because we don't have a king system in most places. But whoever occupies that equivalent position of king, whatever we call it, he's actually responsible for the material and spiritual welfare of his dependents. Scriptures say if you cannot take responsibility, don't become a leader. Guru na sasyat, sajano na sasyat. Don't become father, mother, guru, king, leader. If you cannot, or a devata, if you cannot protect and guide your dependents to progress towards the ultimate destination of life. So do that, Swayambhuva Manu. That is my instruction. Rule with this goal in mind and also set the right example by worshipping the Lord by performances of various yajnas. Because that was the system at that time. And this is at the beginning of the day of Brahma, where Satya Yuga and a lot of yajna performance will be there. So you set the example. You worship the Lord with yajna, and people will follow your example. And through that process of the system of yajna, people will get purified. So that will be the best service for me. By protecting people and guiding them. And when the Lord sees that you are a very good protector of the conditioned souls who are under your care, definitely Lord Rishikesh, who's the master of the senses of everybody, he will be very pleased with you. See, this seva is very, very dear to the Lord. What seva is very dear to the Lord? To take care spiritually of the welfare of those who are in this material world. This seva is very, very dear to the Lord. Not just feeding and clothing. I mean, that part is okay. That is also nice, but that remains at a very material level. But when somebody takes responsibility to help others in their spiritual evolution, the Lord becomes very pleased. Why? Because the Lord wants everybody to be taken care. But the problem is we have rejected the Lord and gone away from Him. That is why the Lord wants His agents, His devotees on His behalf to take care of those who have gone away so that gradually they can be encouraged and guided to come back to Him. Correct? Just like a father, a good father has many children. Some are rebellious children and some are very well-behaved children. So if the elder well-behaved children take care of the rebellious young children who have run away from the home of the father and try to bring them back, what can be a more pleasing service to the father than that? So the Lord becomes very pleased. And that is why even in the Bhagavad Gita, at the end, in the 18th chapter, the Lord says that there is no one who's more dear to me than he who helps others become spiritually connected to me. And nor will there ever be anybody more dear. So the same essential message Brahmaji is saying, that you'll become very dear to the Lord if you govern and protect with this aim in mind, to help others make spiritual advancement. That is why in olden times when the king would rule, the kings would make sure that every person would follow their dharma. If somebody would not follow their dharma properly, they would get punished. That is the real duty on behalf of the Lord, of the great kings and leaders. And when we talk about leaders, please understand, we are not just talking about king and big leaders. Leaders can be leaders of family. Leaders, parents are also leaders for their children. So all these principles apply to parents, to teachers, to leaders in any capacity, leaders of a society, leaders of a community, leaders of a condominium, leaders in an organization, wherever people are looking up to somebody for guidance and are dependent on them, then it is their obligation to give them spiritual guidance as well. So Brahmaji instructs him like that with these three instructions. And he says, not only the Lord will be very pleased with you, he will bless you with all good fortune. Lord Krishna Janardhan, he accepts all kinds of sacrifices. And ultimately, O Swayambhuva Manu, if a living entity, after all his efforts and all his work, is not able to satisfy the Lord, his whole life is wasted. The real self-interest of the living entity, not just of a leader, of any living entity, is ultimately to satisfy the Lord. This is the right thing for you to do. Because one who does not satisfy the Lord is actually simply neglecting his own self-interest. It's a very beautiful statement. Sometimes people think by worshipping the Lord is benefited. But Prahlad Maharaj has said, Nate viduhu swarthagatim hi Vishnu, that the supreme selfishness is to selflessly worship the Lord. The supreme selfishness is to selflessly worship the Lord. Why? Because when we are being materially selfish, we are trying to serve something which is not ourself. Correct? We are trying to serve the body, mind, which is not ourselves. So we are being foolish. So it is not actually selfish. We are foolishly selfish because we are not serving the self. But when we worship the Lord selflessly, the Lord is the self of the self. He is the supreme self. So worshipping the Lord selflessly is the supreme selfishness because it brings the supreme benefit to the self. You understand? If we understand this, then all spiritual life will make perfect sense to us. And this is the technology which most people struggle to understand. That if I want to be happy, why should I not serve my body and mind? Why should I go and worship somebody else? So this is the understanding. Nate viduhu swartha gatim hi Vishnu surashaya ye bahir arthamaninaha. Those who try to find happiness by going out and giving pleasure to the body and the mind and the senses, surashaya, hopelessly they are trying for lasting happiness. They will never get it. Because that is not their self. They are trying to please something which is not the self, thinking it is the self. How can they be happy? But one can please the self by worshipping the supreme self, of which we all are a part of. And by worshipping the supreme self, we not only satisfy ourselves, but we satisfy all other living entities. That is the supreme worship. यथा तरोर मूल निषेचनेन तृप्यन्त तत्स्कंद भुजोपशाखाः प्राणोपहारा चेथेन्द्रियाणाम तथैव सर्वार्हणम अच्युतेज्य. When Achyuta, the root of all existence, is worshipped, everybody and everything is worshipped and pleased. That is the perfect formula. So Brahmaji is telling Swayambhuva Manu, please do this. Because whoever doesn't do this is actually being foolish. Worshipping the Lord is not for the Lord's benefit. It is for our own benefit. So Manu, when he heard these very encouraging words and blessings of Brahmaji, he also became very happy that he received the blessings of his father and his guru. And he said, "Oh great, all-powerful Lord, you are the destroyer of all sins. I will definitely follow your instructions. Now please let me know where I should stay. And also the living entities that I create, where they will stay, because there has become a problem." And what is that problem? Brahmaji, there is a problem because you want me to create and you want me to create on earth. But I'm informing this to you, breaking news, that the earth has just sunk in the Garbhodak ocean. So you're asking me to create. I'm willing to create, but what do I do? Where to create? The earth is already sunk. I'm supposed to rule, but my whole sphere of ruling has gone down into the Garbhodak ocean. It has sunk. So please, you can do this. You do this by the mercy of the Lord. When Brahmaji noted this, he started figuratively scratching his head as to what to do now. I have given instruction, but now another problem has come. See, I mean, I'm just mentioning this again. No matter how high you go in the material world, problems don't stop coming. Okay, we become a little bit upset with this small problem, that small problem. Brahma's problem is earth has sunk into the Garbhodak ocean. These are the kind of problems big devatas have to deal with. So when we go bigger, don't think that in this material world becoming big means I become so big. Yes, you may now be easily able to deal with the small problems that you were dealing with earlier. But when you become big, when you come in a bigger league, you deal with bigger problems. Isn't it correct? If you're a clerk in an office, the problems that you deal with are different from the supervisor, from the manager. The head of department deals with bigger problems, and the CEO deals with even bigger problems. So the nature of the material world is, as you go higher, doesn't mean that your life becomes free from problem. That is why Brahma Bhuvana Loka Punaravartino Arjuna Mam Upetya Kaunteya Punarjanmana Vidyate. Krishna tells in Bhagavad Gita, from the lowest to the highest state, everything, everywhere, problems will be there. Birth, old age, disease, and death will be there. Don't look for a perfect state within this world by changing your position. If you're in a particular position, it's okay. You can remain in that position from an external perspective. If you're a king, you don't have to become a clerk. Or if you're a manager, it's fine. You deal according to your capacity, according to your level, with whatever you have to deal with. But that is not going to, either going up or down is not going to solve your problem materially. You have to transcend material existence. So Brahmaji was thinking, what should I do? The earth has been inundated like this. It has gone to the depths of the Garbhodak ocean. Only the Lord can help in this situation. So as Brahmaji was contemplating on seeking help from the Lord is in the heart, right, of every living entity. Actually, the beauty is we don't even have to pray to the Lord. Prabhupada would oftentimes say, do you think Krishna doesn't know that what your problem is, doesn't know what your situation is? Of course, this is not to say that you should not pray. What I'm saying is that the Lord knows. It's not that we have to inform the Lord. Even before the problem comes, the Lord is already knowing what the problem is going to come. The Lord is always there with his devotees to help them in such a way that they grow spiritually through all the challenges that come their way. So as Brahmaji was thinking about how to deal with this problem and how to get the Lord involved in the resolution, suddenly something came out from the nose of Brahma and flew out. Very small. It came out from the nostril of Brahma and went out. Can you imagine if we are talking let's say I'm giving class and suddenly something comes out from my nose and flies. It's so shocking. Brahma is saying, what is this? And it came out, it was actually a very small fly-sized boar. What is a boar? A boar is a wild pig, has tusks. I don't know whether you have seen. You can Google and see how a boar looks like. It's of the pig family, but it's a wild pig who has it's actually very powerful and very aggressive. Sometimes boars are known to even fight with lions. Like the tusks are so powerful, they can tear apart other animals and human beings with a strike of their tusks. Very powerful, very aggressive. So Brahma was surprised that this boar came out and he flew into the sky. And initially he was small, but as he flew into the sky, he started becoming bigger and bigger and bigger. And eventually he became the size of a great elephant. They were all struck with wonder. And as Brahmaji was seeing this, because Brahmaji was surrounded by the other sages, Marichi, the Kumaras, Swayambhuva, Manu, all of them were there. And they started discussing among themselves, who's this? What has happened? There seems to be some extraordinary entity. Who can come out from Brahma's body? Must be somebody extraordinary, isn't it? Who can breach his security and go inside and then come out like that? Maybe this must be Lord Vishnu. Maybe he's the Supreme Lord. Who else can do this? Who can come in the pretense of a boar like this? And it's so amazing. He was so small as the tip of a thumb, originally it is said. And now within a moment, he has become like a huge stone of an elephant size. Is he Lord Vishnu? As they were thinking like this Varaha form of the Lord started roaring very loudly, as if confirming their doubt. Yes, I am Supreme Personality of Godhead. I am Vishnu. I am Narayan. I am Krishna. And all these great sages, the Brahmanas, the residents of the higher planets, Janaloka, Tapoloka, Satyaloka, they heard this roar and they could understand, this seems to be the all auspicious sound of the all auspicious and all merciful Supreme Lord. They started glorifying the Lord with beautiful prayers from the Vedas. Beautiful prayers from the Vedas. And the Lord was very enthused by this reception. What did the Lord do? The Lord, roaring, he then dove straight with great force, with great speed into the ocean. Of course, before that, it is said he was slashing his tail. Fury, just like an animal who's energetic and furious, he slashes his tail. He was slashing his tail, and the hair on his body was quivering. He was glancing with his beautiful lotus-like eyes. So typically the eyes of a pig aren't so pretty, but this is not an ordinary boar. This is the Supreme Lord. He had beautiful eyes. They were luminous. His tusks seemed so powerful and fearful, and he was glancing with great love and affection towards all these devotees who were offering him prayers. And then he went into the sky and dove at great speed into the water, just like a huge mountain falling into the ocean. Actually, as he jumped in, he actually literally split the ocean into two, like two huge waves, tsunami in two directions. Probably the first tsunami of material existence. By Varahadev jumping into the water, not jumping, diving with full force. It seemed the waves that came from that, it seemed like the two huge arms of the ocean crying out to the Lord, "Oh Lord, oh Yadneshwar, please do not cut me into two pieces. Please protect me." Yeah? It seemed as if the ocean is praying like that when Lord Varaha jumped into the ocean. Huh? When he jumped, correct? When divers dive, if you have seen in any sports, how do they dive? They don't hit their head on the water directly. What they do? They first cut through the water with their arms, isn't it? And then they go in. They keep their body straight. They cut through the water. So the Lord also, at the first dive, he kept his hooves like this, and with his hooves he cut through the water, and he dived into the. His hooves are compared like sharp arrows, and he went and dove down into the Garbhodak ocean. And he went down, 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 deep down, all the way to the bottom of the Garbhodak ocean. And when he went to the bottom, what was his agenda? His agenda was to look for the earth. So he started looking for the earth. But the ways that a boar looks for the earth or looks for anything at all is very different from how some other animals or human beings will look for something, right? When we look for something, how do we look for something? We look by looking around here and there with our eyes. But when animals, and especially animals like the boar, how does a boar look for something? For the boar, the sense of smell is the chief sense of locating something rather than the eyes. So typically, if you have seen boars or pigs, they dig into the earth and they're trying to smell, trying to find something always. Something like that. So it is said he went there, and at the bottom of the ocean, using his nose, he was looking for the earth. And when he found the earth, the resting place of all living beings, he gently lifted it and placed it, the earth, on his tusks. Very easily, effortlessly, that earth is so huge and carrying the load of all living entities, lifted it on his tusks. Then he got out of the water. And he appeared very gorgeous, very splendid. And his anger was also great. He was shining. And his anger was like the fury that is visible in the Sudarshan Chakra. And then, here it is not described in great detail, but then he engaged in a duel with Hiranyaksha. And in that duel, he managed to kill Hiranyaksha. And then he placed the earth above the water, and then the Lord departed. But before the Lord departed, the great sages started glorifying him. In fact, this was a very beautiful scene. It is described in the Bhagavad that the killing of Hiranyaksha by Lord Varaha was just like a lion killing an elephant. A duel between a lion and an elephant. Lion and elephant are very, very graceful creatures. When a lion and an elephant fight, it is indeed a very beautiful spectacle to watch. There are some animals in the animal kingdom who are very graceful. Lion is one of them. Horse is one of them. Elephant is one of them. But the lion and the elephant's example is often used in the scriptures, and sometimes even some of the characteristics of the Lord are compared to them. It is not that the Lord is like them, or rather, they have certain attributes which the Lord displays. Of course, the Lord is the source of everything. So the comparison is given that the Lord killed Hiranyaksha just like a lion kills an elephant. And the Lord killed him after a bloody fight. And it is said that the cheeks and the tongue of the Lord were smeared with the blood of Hiranyaksha. Just like an elephant who plays in the red color earth with the mud, digging it, he also becomes a bit red colored. Similarly, Lord Varaha, his body became reddish like that. So now, actually, here there is another reference, actually, verse 33 of this chapter. This particular chapter, when Viduruji is narrating this pastime, he is narrating the appearance of two different appearances of Varahadev. Now, it is said Varahadev appeared during this episode of Swayambhuva Manu, which was in the Swayambhuva Manvantara. That incarnation of Varaha is the Shveta Varaha, because he was beautiful like the white colored moon, Shveta Varaha incarnation, who appeared from Brahma's nostril and who lifted the earth from the Garbhodak ocean. But there is another time, another Varaha incarnation, again, of course, the same Lord, who appeared. At that time, it is said, he didn't appear from the nostril. That is described in verse 33. At that time, Lord Varaha appeared from the water and he was bluish in complexion. Neela Varaha is the word used. Neela Varaha, bluish complexion, just like Lord Vishnu, Lord Krishna's bluish complexion. This Varaha was bluish colored complexion, bluish like the tamal tree. And he came from the water and he lifted the earth and he killed Hiranyaksha. Now, the scriptures say that this Neela Varaha did not appear in the Swayambhuva Manvantar. This Neela Varaha appeared when Hiranyaksha was born. Hiranyaksha wasn't born in Swayambhuva's Manvantara. Hiranyaksha was born as the son of Diti and Kashyapa in the Chakshusha Manvantara, which is a subsequent Manvantara. So two stories are being mentioned. Both are appearances of Varahadev, one from the Swayambhuva Manvantara and another from the Chakshusha Manvantara. And in that Chakshusha Manvantara, the Lord assumed a bluish complexion and he killed Hiranyaksha. So this killing of Hiranyaksha, this reddish cheek and the tongue and the blood is all being described from the Chakshusha Manvantara, because in the Swayambhuva Manvantara, Hiranyaksha was not involved. The Shvetavara incarnation, the earth apparently was deluged and sunk into the Garbhodak ocean, but it was not because of Hiranyaksha that time. And that time, when Swayambhuva Manu prayed and brought it to Brahmaji's attention at the time, Varahadev appeared from the nostril, went and brought the earth up. He saved the earth, but that time there was no killing of Hiranyaksha. It is said that after the Lord performed this beautiful Varaha pastime, the great sages started glorifying. So in fact, 10 verses, right from verse 34 to verse 45, are all prayers by the great sages. Now, I'm not going to go into the details of the prayers. Essentially, what the prayers summarily say is that, O Lord Varaha, your form, your body is the very embodiment of Yajna. In fact, you are the Lord Yajna himself, your Lord Vishnu. Your form of Varaha is a form of Yajna. Lord is Yajna. Another name for Vishnu is also Yajna. You have appeared at the beginning of the Swayambhuva Manvantara. You are the Manvantara avatar. And in fact, you are the very form. In fact, every limb of your body can be compared to one aspect of the process of Yajna. And then the verses go on describing different aspects of yajna. There are different steps, different ingredients, different aspects. I'm not going to go into those details. But the skin of Vara is compared to the Vedic hymns. His hair is compared to the kusha grass. His eyes are compared to the ghee. His four legs are compared to the four actions of the four kind of brahmanas, the Hota, the Advaryu, the Udgata, and the Brahma. The Chatur Hotram, there are the four kinds of Hotras. And the tongue is compared to the Sarak, the ladle, which is used to offer ghee. The nostril is compared to the sacrificial ladle, while the nostril is compared to the ghee ladle, and so on and so forth. I'm not going to go through all the details. So quite a lot of description. Essentially, what the sages say is, "Oh Lord, you are the very form of yajna." So what that means, through yajna, you are worshipped. You are the beneficiary of the yajna. The yajna system is to satisfy you. You bhoktaram yajna tapasam sarvaloka maheshwar. You are the Lord and beneficiary of all yajnas. And there is something else apart from this description. They say very beautifully about glorification of the Lord. They say, "Oh Lord, you are so beautiful in this particular form." Normally, nobody likes to see pigs. Normally, nobody likes hogs. When we talk about a pet, how many of us will think of a pig as a pet? Or if somebody says, "What is the most beautiful animal you like?" "Oh, I love a pig." How many of us will say like that? "I love a boar." But when the Lord takes a form like that, he becomes so beautiful in that form. Even though it's the form of a pig, that he becomes more beautiful than even the most beautiful thing in this world. That's the amazing thing about the Lord. He's not a dirty pig. He's the most beautiful pig that everybody just, wow, so glorious, so beautiful, so effulgent, so attractive. Krishna is all attractive. In any form he takes, he becomes all attractive. And beautiful comparisons are given when Varaha is lifting the earth on his tusks. The sages give comparisons. They say, "Oh Lord, you are appearing like an elephant holding a lotus flower with his trunk." You are carrying the earth is like an elephant carrying a lotus flower in the trunk. Or it is like a huge mountain which is decorated on the top with beautiful clouds. And you and your wife, Earth. Earth is your wife, Earth is your consort, in whom you have invested your personal energy. It's such a beautiful view to see you and your wife, Earth. Bhumi Devi is one of the consorts of the Lord. The earth on which we are staying, the Bhumi Devi, she is one of the consorts of the Lord. In fact, she is an expansion of Satyabhama, who is one of the eternal consorts of the Lord. That is why, O Lord, you and Mother Earth are our father and mother. It's beautiful. Now we are able to see father, mother together. Otherwise, the father is behind the scenes as far as his material existence is concerned. And Prakriti or earth is in the foreground. We are usually able to see mother. We are rarely able to see the father, but now we are seeing father and mother together. And only you could have saved. Who else would have saved the earth? Because this whole world is manifested by your beautiful divine potency. And when you came out of the water, O Lord Varaha, you shook your body to remove all the extra water on your body. And when the hair on your body, through your shaking, all the water was sprinkling everywhere, and all this water has fallen on us. All these residents of Janarlok, Maharlok, Tapolok, and this is Charanamrit. This water is Charanamrit. It is not the water from the body of a pig. Imagine if a pig is near you and he does like this, and all the water sprinkles on you. You'll first want to go and take a bath because you don't know where all the pig has laid. But this is not an ordinary pig. This is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Varaha. This is water directly from his body. It is Charanamrut. We all have become purified by the Charanamrut, which is coming. The Shivambu Bindubhir. Shivambu. This is auspicious water. From your shaking, Vidhunvata. And why? It is from your body, which is made of the Vedas. You are the very personification of Vedas. Vedamayam. Your activities, O Lord, are unlimited. Apara karmanaha. Foolish people who have bhrashtamati, they don't understand your unlimited nature. So please be kind on living entities. Please bless them that they can understand. And then the Lord, he placed the earth on the water, like what we just discussed, and he returned to his own abode. So Maitreya Muni concludes the story of Varahadev. This is a brief mention. This story, and especially the story in the Chakshusha Manvantara, is described in great detail in the subsequent chapters when the story of Kashyapa and Diti and then Hiranyaksha comes into picture. So there is more action. This was just trailer. The movie is still to play. So hold on. Hopefully this is appetizing enough for you to see the movie. Yeah. So this was a brief mention in connection with Swayambhuva Manu, because you're describing Swayambhuva Manu, and the Shvetavaraha incarnation happened in connection with Swayambhuva Manu. That is why it's mentioned. And the Neelavaraha is mentioned as by the way, as a quick reference in one verse. But that story of the Neelavaraha is expanded in a subsequent story as a part of the Chakshusha Manvantara pastimes. So this chapter ends, just 2 more minutes, this chapter ends with Maitreya Muni beautifully glorifying this pastime of Lord Varaha. He says that this pastime of Lord Varaha is so special, is so potent spiritually, that whoever hears, please listen to this carefully, whoever hears and describes with a devotional attitude, important, devotional attitude, this auspicious narration of Lord Varaha, whoever describes and hears this auspicious narration, the Lord becomes very pleased. Simply by hearing this, the Lord becomes very pleased. This pastime is very special. So all of you have heard with faith. So if you have heard with faith, the Lord is very pleased with you. And what is the importance of pleasing the Lord? Ultimately, Viduraji, Maitreya Muni is saying, ultimately it's all about pleasing the Lord, because what remains unachieved if one pleases the Lord? We are actually working so hard to get so many things in this world, but the easiest way to get the topmost thing in all existence is simply to please the Lord. Isn't it correct? Yeah. If you are born in a poor family, you have to work hard and become a billionaire. But if you are the son of a billionaire, all you have to do is just be good to your father. Yes, then you automatically become billionaire. So you just have to please the Father. Our Father is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the Lord of everything, and He can give all benediction. We just have to be good children. So please the Lord. And why that? Everything will be achieved. The highest spiritual realization can be bestowed on the Lord. The abode of the Lord can be bestowed when one becomes pleased. He who engages in devotional service to the Lord and pleases Him definitely achieves the highest perfectional stage of devotional service. Because the Lord is situated in the heart. He knows exactly what is our mentality. We may think we are externally worshipping the Lord, but the Lord very clearly knows what is the mood with which we are worshipping Him. And that is why we use the word pure devotee. What does pure devotee mean? He who doesn't worship the Lord simply to make a show. He who doesn't worship the Lord simply to get something in return. But he who simply worships the Lord out of love and affection and appreciation for the Lord. Such people, whom the Lord knows that their motive is pure, He grants them the highest benefit. Of course, anybody worships the Lord blesses them. But the highest benefit of the Lord's personal association, the Lord's abode, is granted to those who worship Him like that. So that is how glorious it is to please the Lord. And that is why he concludes this chapter by saying, only a person, a foolish person, who cannot even be called a human being will not worship the Lord and try to please him. The Lord is so wonderful and he can give such great blessings. Isn't it foolish to not be interested in him? Isn't it foolish to not to try to please him? And it is so easy to please him, as I just mentioned, simply by hearing his beautiful narrations. Shrunvatam Swakata Krishna Punya Shravana Kirtanaha. What is the Punya? Simply Shravana and Kirtana is Punya. It is great spiritual merit simply to hear in a devotional attitude the glorification of the Lord. And especially this pastime, it is said of Varaha, is especially auspicious and immediately pleases the Supreme Lord. So he who wants to be delivered from all miseries of material existence, wouldn't he naturally be interested in hearing about the Lord and his glories? That is how this beautiful chapter ends, by re-emphasizing the importance that the highest attainment is to attain the abode and association of the Lord, and by which all material pangs will be freed. And that destination can be achieved by pleasing the Lord. And how can the Lord be pleased? Simply by hearing and chanting about him with a devotional attitude. Punya, Shravana, Kirtana. And that is why only a foolish person who is like an animal will refuse to hear the Lord. I'm not saying, so please don't go and say, Prabhuji told in class, because you're not attending Bhagavatam class, you're like an animal. But, this is what Maitreya Muni is telling Vidura. Those who are not interested in hearing are like animals. Why? Because they are foolish. They don't understand the great good fortune, the opportunity that is being extended to them. Okay. So thank you very much. Lord Varahadeva ki jai, Swayambhu Manu ki jai, Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Thank you. Sorry, I went a little bit about time. Anyone has any questions or comments?
Prabhu, just want to find out, this
Yes.
Narakasura is, I mean, he comes as a result of Vara Dev, what you call like impregnating the earth, is it?
Yes, correct. Yeah. He was originally known as Bhauma because he is the son of Bhumi, but later, because of bad association, he loses all his spiritual qualities and becomes demoniac. He associates with Banasur and other demons and becomes sinful. But when Varahadev came in touch with Bhumi Devi by his blessings, he gave the son Bhauma to Bhumi. So that's also a lesson for us, that we may have the highest blessings, but if we don't use it the proper way, then it's also possible we may lose the blessings, which is what happened with Bhauma. He became Narakasur and the Lord had to eventually kill him. Any other points?
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Yes, Tirisundar.
Prabhu, I wanted to just clarify some points you made, I think, last class or what, because you were talking about the mind. Okay. Basically, when the mind is contaminated, basically then it won't allow the soul to to kind of activate its kind of dormant Krishna consciousness. Okay, so that is one point. And in what some aspect we will also compare with the heart, because if there is anything as far as what the devotional aspect is concerned, there has to be a change in heart. So I'm trying to see in terms of the linkage between the mind and the heart, how do you narrate this back to the soul? Because like in terms of which is more important, is it the mind or the heart? Because because as we know, it is
the seat of the mind, the seat where this experience, the feeling, the emotions, the chitta is centered around the region of the heart. The chitta contains the thinking part, it contains the memories, it contains the impression, the feeling part. Yeah. So for the sake of simplicity, you can consider it similar, even though technically there are certain differences. We don't have to go too much into the technicalities. But consciousness, the soul is in the region of the heart, and the consciousness is expanded from the region of the heart elsewhere. And that is why when we feel here, right? In the region of the heart, right? Correct. We don't feel here. We feel here.
yes, Prabhu, yeah.
Yeah. So that is because the presence of the soul. That is why when we talk about the heart, the word heart is often used in terms of the emotional aspect of the consciousness. Yeah, the feeling. Yeah? That is why the word heart. Of course, the consciousness expands itself to the whole body. It's not that consciousness is only in the heart. But the feeling aspect is especially experienced in the region of the heart. Because that is the seat of the soul in the region of the heart. And the consciousness of the soul, which is in that region, is permeated throughout the body from that region. Yeah. So the soul, so that chitta, which is the consciousness, which has various impressions and all that, when it becomes contaminated with materialistic contamination, it is unable. What we said last time was that the pure mind, the pure chitta, reflects the pure nature of the soul, and the soul can perceive itself in its true nature when the soul is pure. When the chitta is pure, and the chitta is pure, it's like a mirror; it reflects itself, and one can see oneself as the eternal servant of the Lord, spiritual in nature, Satchidananda. Mamai Vamsho Jivaloke Jivabhuta Sanatana. But when it is agitated with material dirt, one is unable to see oneself, and one gets illusioned with bodily identification and gets entrapped in material energy. That was the point.
Okay, Prabhu, thanks.
Welcome. Anything else?
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Yes, Shalini ji, Hare Krishna.
I have a doubt. When Swayambhu Manu was instructed by Brahmaji to populate the earth, so and also to rule the earth, then from when did this Varna start, the casteisms? Because everybody was either come from Manu, so Swayambhu Manu, or his like progeny from the sages. So how they were like, how
So
they
the sages progeny is the Brahmanas, right?
Brahmanas,
The
yeah. Then
the progeny of the
Shudra.
kings, yeah. So that will come in the subsequent chapters, how the others came. So the process of progeny is not fully completed yet. Amongst the descendants of the various personalities, so many others will come. So the Varnas gradually come. So at the beginning of creation, it is said there was Eka Varna. Everybody was Hamsa. Hamsa means everybody was perfectly spiritually realized. And gradually, as time proceeded, as the other gunas started taking prominence, then the other orders also started manifesting. So that also went through a journey. It is not that Shudras were just created like this.
Okay.
Yeah. So those will come. Yeah. So some of these were manifested in due course. So initially, all these great sages, the Sanat Kumars, they are like a Brahmanas. Of course, they are Paramahamsas actually. They are even beyond Brahmanas. Narad Muni also is beyond. But then the Brahmanas were created as sages. All these sages who were created, and that is why, if you recollect, for all those who are connected or from a Brahminical lineage, even from this group, some of us are from a families or from Brahminical lineage. We trace our ancestry to one of the sages, isn't it? We say, what is your Gotra? oh, my Gotra is Vashishta, my Gotra is Vishwamitra, my Gotra is Kashyapa, or so on. So these are all sages. So these sages are descendants of sages. So that is how that tracing comes. So my Gotra is Vatsa, which means I am a descendant of the sage called Vatsa. Long, long back from him that line is coming. His sons are like, I don't know how many generations, unlimited generations. So those who are from a Brahmanical lineage generally have that kind of a tracing back to a sage. Of course, there are also some Kshatriyas who originally had a Brahmanical father, but then, it led to a branch out of a Kshatriya. So that all those things will come out from the subsequent chapters of how the world expanded. For example, Kashyapa is a great sage, but all his children and progeny are not sages or Brahmanas. In fact, there are all kinds of species who are amongst his descendants. There are the Asuras, the Daityas, then there are so many species who actually descended, and those will be described in the subsequent chapters. So creation hasn't been completed. Manu has just been created. So many things are yet to happen. So the movie has just started. You have to wait.
Thank you.
So Prabhuji, one doubt. The earth falling into ocean, was it a leela of the god or was it done by someone else?
For Shvetavara incarnation, I'm not very sure what was the immediate cause of the earth going down, but in the Chakshusha Manvantara, the earth drowning was because of Hiranyaksha's mischief. He exploited the earth to the point that the earth became unstable from the orbit and fell into the Garbhodak ocean. That is what is mentioned for the Chakshusha Manvantara. The Shvetavara Manvantara, I'm not very sure though, so I don't want to speculate. But all that is mentioned here is that, that the earth was inundated. How exactly it was inundated, or was it that it was inundated because it was the beginning of creation and the earth had not yet come out? Maybe that is the explanation, but I don't want to, unless somebody knows that they can share that.
I'm aware of this Hiranyaksha and Vara, the fight.
Yeah.
That's why I got confused. Okay.
Correct. So that is, in that fight, definitely the earth was forcefully caused to go away from the orbit and drown into the Garbhodak ocean. Yeah. But this pastime of Shvetavaraha, I think I have a feeling that it was, part of the devastation, that the earth was still covered over in the water of devastation, possibly, while the higher planets were out of the water. Maybe, again, this is speculation, but I can try to find out. If anybody knows, they can share. But it is not very clear, at least in this chapter, what was the reason.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so thank you all very much. So sorry I missed the Wednesday Gita class. So we will try to do it this week. But if I can't, because of late I've been a bit busy at work, I will let you know. So please accommodate. And then I'll keep you informed. Okay, so all of you take care. Mitra Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai.